Welcome back to Sith Who Can't Breathe Anonymous. I'm Darth Malgus.
Hi, Darth Malgus.
Today we are going to be discussing the topic of love because it seems as though all of us are very bad at sustaining love. Let's go around and each talk about how we express these feelings. Let's start with you.
I murdered a whole bunch of children and I left my wife to die with sad.
That's not really the way to do it. How about you?
Love is for the weak. It is merely a crux to one's path to immortality.
Maybe you're not the type of guy to ask these questions. You. Okay, I'm gonna have you your Prozac by the end of the day, I promise. How about... what are you doing here?
You must walk the path of Revan to truly understand love. I left my wife with her child as I traversed the stars in search of the gift of...
I stabbed my wife straight through the heart to be sure I could be stronger.
What is your problem?
Hello my friends and welcome back to Play or Display. This time around let's have a look at the Star Wars The Black Series gaming greats Darth Malgus from the Star Wars The Old Republic massive multiplayer online whatever video game. So, who the hell is Darth Malgus for those of you who don't know? He was one of the main antagonists who appears in the very expansive third installment of the Knights of the Old Republic video game franchise, Star Wars The Old Republic, which is still a live online game, which is surprising to me because it is Legends and Disney hasn't shot it down yet. I guess if the cash cow is still running, then don't shoot it pretty much, right? And Darth Malgus, he's one of those characters I love to hate him, you know? He's really badass, but at the same time he's so absolutely unapologetically evil that he's kind of amazing too. One of his greatest achievements is, of course, the sacking of the Jedi Temple. There's an entire cinematic for that. If you want to see a Star Wars movie that's better than the sequels, watch all the trailers for Star Wars The Old Republic. I swear to God, those will be the best 30 minutes of your life. So good stuff. So he destroys the temple, and then he also is married to a wife, and they are one of the sexiest couples in Star Wars history. You can't knock me on that. And one of the most insane things that I've ever seen a Star Wars character do is he stabs his own wife through the heart to make himself stronger in the dark side through his remorse. Oh my god! Right when we thought Anakin was a bad guy, right? But anyways, enough of the lore, let's go ahead into this figure who is absolutely amazing. Now, he is from the more deluxe side of things, so that just means he's a little bigger, he's got a little bit more plastic going on, and he's a pretty great figure. I've got a few gripes, but overall, without a shadow of a doubt, he's a pretty excellent addition to the collection. So let's go ahead and start with the big old Mamma Jamma box. As you could expect, the box is pretty big. Again, it's a deluxe figure, so he gets a little bit more space, a little bit more real estate in the cardboard here. But we have a profile picture of the figure himself. We have Star Wars The Old Republic, Darth Malgus, got your holographic Gaming Great sticker. Of course, no longer GameStop exclusives, now they're kind of just part of the main line. Have a very beautiful profile artwork shot of him over here on the side. Off to this side, we have him once again with his one lone accessory being his very big juggernaut lightsaber. Over here, we have the same shot that we saw on the back, but we also have his multilingual bios, if you care to go ahead and read a little bit more if you like. A little bit less than what I explained, but if you want the Cliff's Notes, this is the way to go. Down here, whole lot of nothing that we don't care about, except our good old friend
Sad audience.
So now that brings us into the actual figure himself. I do actually have the much bigger, much more highly detailed Sideshow variant of him. Or was it Hot Toys? I can't remember. I always get the two confused. But because I have that figure, I do have a little bit more of a keen eye staring at this one. I'm a little bit more critical, so if I'm a little heavy-handed in the critique department, I apologize. But really, with all that back knowledge out of the way, this is a very good toy. So let's start at the head sculpt. Of course, one of the first things you notice is the very beautifully done soft goods hood. I think Star Wars The Black Series has really mastered the art of taking a 6-inch scale figure and stitching down the hood and whatever other soft goods they have, just so they have this very nice gravity to them. They feel very natural It doesn't feel like it's poofing over like a Jesus halo in the paintings or anything like that. This time it actually feels like it's resting on its head, and the corners are kind of draping down and they're connected to his armor. It just feels a lot more cozy and realistic. So I really love what they're doing there. But of course, you can go ahead and pull it right back, and then we get the rest of his head. And before we go into the finer details, I will say one of the complaints I have with this figure and some of the other figures I've seen in the past with soft goods is that when they come unboxed with the hood on, that results in a little bit of dark residue on the head. Now, actually, for this figure, it doesn't make much of a difference because he's a Darksider. His face is screwed up by the Force anyways, and by a whole bunch of battle damage, so it actually kind of adds to him. Like, you can even see here on the ear, you got a little bit of that black rub from the cloth. But I've only ever seen that with the Amazon exclusive Palpatine. I haven't seen it on any other figures, but yeah, just be wary with any figure with a black hood specifically. That might lead to a little bit of staining on the head, especially if the hood's already on. So just something to keep in mind with Hasbro. But again, for two Sith Lords, it actually doesn't really hurt the experience, right? So it kind of enhances them a bit. But moving on to the actual head sculpt, it looks absolutely fantastic. Very human looking, very much like he did in the trailers for the game, which, interestingly enough, looked better than the game itself, as they're notoriously described. We see a little bit of battle damage down here, which is similar in color to what we saw with the Darth Malgus, who we will bring off for size comparisons, but I feel like here, it's done a lot better. Even though it's the same color, I feel like it matches a lot better in tandem with the sculpt that's here. For Malgus, I feel like it was kind of spread out, but on Malgus, again, the names are similar. I feel like they just blend it in a little bit more nicely. You feel like it's going more in the direction of the damage, if you get my meaning, so that's really nice to see. Moving up a little closer to the front of the face, you have some of that veining, scrabbly scar work. I don't know what you call it, like Force lightning damage, dark side corruption, whatever it is you want to call it. But it's very faint, but it is there. I feel like a little bit of airbrushing could have helped to bring that out just a little bit more, but that looks really good. Also very good is the eyeshadowing, again, to make him look very tired and done with life, as most Sith are. And then going down to the back, there's a big old bald head, not a whole lot else to discuss there, although you do have a little bit of microchip or something for the respirator. And speaking of that, the respirator is removable, though it is a little bit difficult. Not really difficult, it's just a little intimidating because I'm not so used to pulling off the heads from modern Star Wars Black Series figure because of the new dumbbell joints. But for him, you can do it. You just want to reach underneath, right at the jaw right here. Just give it a good pull. Wriggle it off. There we go. You could pop the respirator off. Then you get a full look at his unmasked face. So he's not missing his jaw like Malgus was, so he's a little bit better off. But you do get a continuation of the scarring off to the side, courtesy of Jace Malcolm, of course. And then perhaps also Satil Shan as well. Then going around, no real other differences. It's really just the mouth and the scarring portion. That's pretty much the rest of the head sculpt that we have to see with the mask off. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back on for the rest of this review because obviously that's what we prefer the most. The sculpt work on the rest of this figure is absolutely immaculate. I love what they did with the armor. So over here we have these very simple looking 3 circle cog designs. I'm not too sure what the function is. It's supposed to be similar to Darth Vader's respirator button PS4, whatever the hell's going on, but it looks really good, very accurate to the game, of course. One thing I'll say here, which I can say on behalf of the rest of the figure, is I feel like there's kind of a lack in the paint department. The sculpt and the color choice is all accurate, of course, but I feel like, especially for Malgus, he should definitely have some scoring, a little bit more gloss in certain places, especially here on the gunmetal color that we have throughout the figure. I feel like it should have a little bit more of a sheen to it, just a little bit of gloss. I don't know, I just feel like he could use a little bit more to help him pop just a tad, especially since he is a deluxe figure. Like, yeah, he's taller than usual, but I feel like if you're not going to give him much more accessories than just his lightsaber, then you should at least be giving him a lot more paint. But that's really my only big critique against this figure. I mean, from a distance, he reads fine. Up close, he's still fine. But again, because I had that much taller figure from way back when, I'm a little bit biased, but still this figure as he is, he looks really spectacular. Moving on to the arms, we have perhaps the biggest shoulder pauldrons we've ever seen on a Black Series figure. I mean, he's a big boy. He's quite wide, so these things are immense. One thing I did want to mention is the way that they're hooked in. They're hooked in similarly to the Clone Troopers. So you got the shoulder pad kind of hooked right under the arm through here, but that means it can also rotate all the way 360 with the arm. Like, see, we just went all the way around the world there. So it's good that it is that flexible for all the many poses that you can get him in, but at the same time, it can be a little finicky where, you know, you just want to pose the arm somewhere, but then you realize, oh, I gotta nudge that down a little bit, and you kind of gotta set it back in place, but not a huge deal. I mean, it's better to have the option than to not have it at all, so that's totally okay. The rest of the body pretty much follows the same motif of having this segmented armor, where it kind of varies between this gray underglove, then you have the black padding, looking very awesome, and a little bit hockey-ish, I suppose, as well. The belt and the gauntlets are also very well sculpted. The gauntlets are identical, I mean, inversed, of course, between your lefty and your righty. The belt, not a whole lot of buttons to look at, but looking very high-tech, very oddly for the old Republic, but whatever, it still looks good. Down to the legs, more of that padding. Down to the boots, very heavily armored, and it looks like a kick to the face would end your life very, very fast. Let's go ahead and move on to this absolutely gigantic mega lightsaber. I actually had to pan out just so you could get a sense of the full scale of this blade. In fact, to show you the difference of just how big this thing is, I want to get Darth Vader's lightsaber, but I couldn't find it for some reason. I'm kind of moving things around at the moment, but I do have half of Reva's lightsaber, which is pretty much the same standard blade as normal. But if you get these two together, sorry, I'm a righty, so I gotta move around a little bit, but you can see from the peg to the rest of the blade, the ends. His blade is quite massive and overcompensating. I honestly didn't expect it to be this huge. I thought it would be maybe a hair longer just to compensate for how tall he is, but now that I got it, I didn't realize it was this gargantuan. It's crazy to look at, especially compared to his standard saber over here. I mean, when Vader has something similar to this, well, in fact, he did hold Reva's saber at one point, and then you see this big guy, it really puts things into perspective, so really awesome. But anyhow, moving on to the grip, which is one of my favorite lightsaber hilts, I think. You can see it's got that fork design, which is very Old Republic. We saw something similar with Malak as well. Going down to the grip, feels a little bit Anakin Skywalker, which is almost like poetry, almost as if it rhymes. But yeah, most of it is pretty much cast in a gunmetal gray, though you got a darker gunmetal gray over here to accent the fork a little bit more. You also have a button. I wish I was painted in a little bit of a red. I think that would have been nice to see. But regardless, it's definitely Malgus' saber, looking really excellent and looking very painful. I mean, even with the blade out, and you can take it out with a little bit of caution. There we go. You can probably sense that even without turning the thing on, you could just stab someone right through the gut with it. So yeah, this is a not safe looking saber, which is perfectly fitting for someone as terrible and dangerous as Darth Malgus. Let's move on to articulation. Fortunately for the head, the mask is high enough on the face that it does not interfere with the head sculpt at all, so he can go fair deal down, a good deal back. He's got some excellent tilt, got all your swivel. As for the arms, you kind of talked about how the shoulder pad kind of moves with the arm, but goes 360 all the way around, so you kind of got to carry it with you if you want to go that far. As for out, not quite 90, that's alright, he has plenty much more going on. A very distinct bicep swivel right there, one more an elbow swivel, excuse me, but it goes all the way far, no hindering at all. There's a little bit of a chip in the sculpt right there, which is of course intentional, so that way he can hit a little past 90 when you position him right. If you don't utilize that, then it's exactly 90, which is totally fine. As for the wrist, you get swivel on this hand, you get in and out on the left, and on the right, you get up and down. Very good. Let's actually go ahead and pop in the saber so we can see how that looks. So going all the way up, pretty much hits 90. If you move the saber back a little bit, goes a little bit past, move it straight down, And then he does a good lightsaber point. Under the torso, it looks like we have a few joints going on here. So we have one under the main pec area over here, so he's got a swivel. Doesn't allow for much forward, back, or tilt, but you do get that down here at the waist, where you get that much tilt, get a little bit forward, much more back. That's pretty much what you've been seeing with Black Series, more back than forward, which is okay. As for legs, this is one of the main things I was excited about from the product shots, because they did show off some really amazing leg articulation, and it is definitely nothing to sneeze at. I mean, look at that. Look how far up that goes. He can do a beautiful dark side kick, just like he does in the trailers for the game, which is really cool to see. There is no thigh swivel, though. I feel like they definitely could have done that. Maybe do like sort of a plastic separate floating piece over here that's kind of just pinned down to the lower thigh, kind of like what they did with Fifth Brother, I believe. I think that would have been great. So it's unfortunate they couldn't do that, especially since he's a lot bigger. So I feel like that's something they could have definitely squeezed in, but again, I'm nitpicking here. Everything else here still moves great. As for the legs, I guess you don't need a thigh cut, because you do have a swivel at the knee, which goes down to not quite 90, but close enough. As for the ankles, you got that far back, that far forward, and we also got a lot of rocker. Really like this figure a lot. Of course, I prefer the big one a little bit more because there's more details to squeeze in, but I kind of like how I can have that one unhooded and this one hooded, especially to hide up all the stains that we talked about. So yeah, this figure's great, a lot of fun. Now here we are at a weaponless size comparison. Sorry, I wasn't able to grab everything I needed to have everybody complete, but we got a little bit of everything here. So mostly from KOTOR, but I also threw in a Darth Vader from Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is pretty much the latest Darth Vader we got from Black Series, if I'm correct, at least the ones that have been released thus far. And even Malgus is taller than Vader, so that's quite telling as to how huge this dude is. Then over here we have Zalbar, who is on the standard Wookiee body, and still it remains one of the biggest Black Series molds that we've seen to this day, still taller than Malgus. And over here we have Malik, who I've name dropped several times throughout this review, and of course Malgus is taller than everybody here, including Malik, as well as Bastila and Lightside Revan. And then lastly, he of course towers above the Star Wars: The Black Series, Mechamuck!
Face me, small insect.
Between you, giant lightsaber, and my mechanical arm, it's as if we're both trying to hide something very deep about ourselves, huh?
And that is a wrap for this review of one of the most horrible Sith Lords in Star Wars history. I think everybody really wanted this figure to come out, at least the people who are Old Republic fans. And even if you're not into Old Republic or are not too aware of the KOTOR franchise as a whole, he's still a really cool Sith figure, especially considering how tall he is and how you can add to that silhouette of all your dark side users along your shelf. I feel like it would be very cool to have like Darth Vader seem like the tallest. You got some Sith that are a little shorter like Palpatine and Maul. Then all of a sudden you got Malgus just towering over everyone there. Also, this figure makes me very hopeful about other figures they can do. Like, they've been tapping into figures from KOTOR 1 and 2, but this is the first one that we've gotten from the third game, if you go ahead and exclude the 3.75-inch figures that they did way back when, which I do have of him as well, so I technically have 3 Malguses now. But I guess what I'd want on my wish list, firstly, would be Alina Daru. I'd really want to have his wife, because I think they were such a kick-ass looking couple, for as short as they lasted. And then, absolutely, we'd want Satele Shan, descendant of Darth Revan and Bastila, of course. It would be really great to see them dueling together. Then I think Jace Malcolm would also be awesome. There's just so many characters from that roster that we never really play as, but we kind of put our heart and souls into, that I think we would love to see in plastic form. So that would be spectacular. Especially if you can have all the posing options that you have here with Malgus. And speaking to the Black Series line as a whole, if you can get a figure this big that poses as much as he does, imagine what they could do with the smaller figures that they do in the future. It's only up and at 'em from here. Like, this guy is really telling of what they're going to do next, and I'm really excited. I'm hoping for some really good surprises in 2024. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed this review and would like to support this channel, then please, as per usual, be sure to like, comment,
And subscribe, or anger a dark lord of the Sith.
Well, thank you once again, rock on, and I will see you all later. And for those of you who are thinking, well, he looks a little similar to Darth Vader, and that is because, well, yes, he does. He's actually a predecessor to Darth Vader. In fact, Darth Vader studied Darth Malgus's fight set so that way he could learn to fight while in his new cybernetic armor. So, technically, Darth Malgus is one of Darth Vader's first dark side teachers when you really think about it. So, that's very neat. Oh, and he also has a very nice cape. I forgot to mention the cape, so yeah, sorry about that. He's got a cape.
No capes!